Welcome back, listeners, to another episode of The Snake Pit. I'm your host, Son of Bat, and tonight I'll be talking about Satan's Swarm. Released in 2024, Satan's Swarm is a horror comic written by Steve Niles. For those of you who don't know, Steve Niles is the creator of 30 Days of Night. He also did another horror comic I absolutely love called 28 Days Later, The Aftermath, which serves as both a prequel to 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later. And one day I hope to cover that on the channel because that is a really, really sick comic. But anyway, back to Satan's Swarm. Art by Piotr Kowalski. I hope I said that right. He's another heavy hitter in the horror comics scene. He's done work on Clive Barker's Nightbreed, which is another really sick comic that I enjoy. And I believe he did work on Hellraiser, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to have to double check that later. But again, two heavy hitters, so you know this is going to be a pretty interesting, pretty wild story. Colors by Lovren Kindersky. Hope I said that right. And lettering by Nate Picos. And of course released by Dark Horse Comics. They call this a trade paperback, but I kind of disagree with that, and you'll see why in a bit. To explain this comic, I'm going to be going over the plot, so spoilers are in order. However, it's a pretty basic plot, in my opinion, so I don't think I'll be spoiling too much. Of course, there'll be a couple details here and there. So if anyone's really, really interested and has just got to have this comic before, catching a review on it, go ahead, pause right now and come back later. But I don't really want to consider this a total review. I think this is also like a before you buy, but I'll get, again, more into that later. So heads up, some spoilers, but it's not like devastating or anything like that. So essentially the plot is about this guy named Dr. Philip Morgan who invites a random group of people to his island. And this includes an entomologist, an influencer, a reporter, a visual artist, a cop, and a clerk. He invites everyone under false pretenses. Like, for example, the influencer is told that there's like a Coachella type concert, like a clout festival for her, basically. The cop's told that he has a security job. I believe the artist is told that she's going to be like painting a mural. So everyone gets told different things to come down here. And when they all show up, they're confused because they have no real reason or no idea who sent them or real reason why they're there. Immediately, they're introduced to some militia type people that are guiding them through like this slum shithole town where everyone's packing. And once they get through the town, they cross this bridge into a separate part of the island. It's like another island connected via bridge. And once they get there, they get to Dr. Philip Morgan's like complex, which is like covered with fucking, SWAT tactical looking dudes in like balaclavas with MP5s and shit. So everyone comes out and they're all like super confused because they're like, what the fuck are we doing here? And he assures them that in time they'll figure out why they're there. But, enjoy yourself. Take a look around. You guys are going to be really happy that you're here. But of course, some people aren't having it and they demand to know why they're there. And we find out pretty quickly why they're there. They're there to see a zoo. But not just any zoo. As you guessed by the cover, it's an insect zoo. And this guy, Dr. Philip Morgan, is a fucking nut. Essentially, he's trained I'd say trained is the best way. He's trained these fucking ants and wasps and centipedes and all these different kinds of fucking bugs to eat people and strip them down to skeletons. There's bodies all over his complex of like pink fleshy skeleton kind of muscleized corpses everywhere, and immediately everyone's on the run into the woods trying to get away. We get some really gruesome fucking deaths in this, some like really wild ones. Like this one chick gets a bunch of bugs in her and they start infesting her until she's like bursting at the seams with like bare insects and shit. A guy gets like face fucked by a whole heap of wasps and shit. It is crazy. And of course there's ants eating people's skin. This whole thing erupts into chaos, and of course, spoiler alert, here is your chance to duck out. Now, if you are really interested by this and want to buy this, pause right now because I'm going to spoil pretty much a big plot point here. But toward the middle and end of this, you kind of get hit with an exposition dump as to why everyone's there. And Dr. Philip Morgan invited all these people because they are all relatives or descendants of scientists or other research workers that in his mind fucked him over on his bug insect research. So this is his way of getting back at them by killing their relatives. It's a really fucked up plan, and it pretty much is about to work until one of the potential victims, the lady who's been infested by hordes and hordes of bugs, makes it into his compound. She regurgitates bugs all over him and he gets fucking eaten to death. the two remaining survivors, they end up making it in town where, surprise, surprise, the asshole locals aren't assholes. They were just suspicious of this piece of shit doctor. They come out in hazmat suits like a fucking Bruno Mattei movie. They start torching these little fucking shits everywhere. And pretty much the story ends. But you get this nice little B-movie ending where you get a shot of Dr. Philip Morgan in his wheelchair as a skeleton just getting munched on. And then out of nowhere, from behind all of his computer terminals, a bunch of giant fucking ants bust through, implying that what we saw was probably just phase 1 and that phase 2 was probably way, way bigger bugs. Now, will we get a sequel to this comic? I have no idea. There's been no word on that. From what everything has been implied here on the website, on the comic, this is a standalone story, which I have no problem with that. I've always said with movies, a standalone story is always good. It's better to, like, just have one really solid story instead of like basing your whole thing off making a franchise, because I think that just shows your greed. And also, you can't really dedicate yourself to one solid movie if you're thinking of like 5 down the line, or in this case, comic book stories. I mean, it could be different. I don't know how different movie making and comic book writing is, but it's cool that this is a self-contained story. You don't really see that a lot. Everything's usually part of an expanded universe or is going to be sequel to fuck, so that's pretty cool. The other thing I do appreciate about this is it gives off a very, Euro horror 80s grindhouse feel. I mentioned when I was talking about the plot Bruno Mattei. It definitely reminds me of a Bruno Mattei movie or a Lucio Fulci movie. Even maybe in some respects Jess Franco movie in terms of its carnage and violence. Certainly reminds me of killer bug movies like, Slugs or like Centipede horror or even fucking Squirm. It's got that just disgusting, like, bugs infesting people, like 70s, 80s vibe. And I really fucked with it. I thought it was sick. Again, Steve Niles wrote 30 Days a Night. He's a very talented horror writer. So it is a good story, but aside from, like that 80s grindhouse love letter shit, my compliments kind of end there. And what really rubbed me the wrong way about this comic, I keep saying comic, even though it's advertised as a graphic novel, because in my personal opinion, it is a comic book. It's been a while since I bought single issues on the regular, but I'm pretty sure 64 pages is like a special edition. Like, I have a few Tales from the Crypt comics that are like special edition 64 page special, or like even a couple Punisher comics where like special edition 64 pages, but those only cost like a couple bucks a piece. This graphic novel off Canadian price, my price was, and I don't mean to sound like an Israelite here, it was $29.99. Like, I'm paying like basically $30 plus tax for 64 pages when, again, I could get Punisher versus Lifeform issue 1 or like Tales from the Crypt special edition. I can get those 64 page comics for like $1 or $2 a piece at a comic store. Yet because this is sold as a binded trade paperback graphic novel, it's sold at full price, 30 plus. I think that's kind of fucked up. Especially because at the end of the comic, it literally just ends. There's no extras. There's no storyboard stenciling. There's no, word from the creator. There's nothing. There's like, it just kind of feels bare bones. And it just feels like a little bit of a ripoff. I mean, it was a good story. It's got me talking about it. I'm still thinking about it a couple days after finishing it, and I definitely will read it again. It's just that it was way too fucking short. The characters weren't fleshed out as well. And of course, the ending was tacked on. Like, the explanation was pretty tacked on. But at the same time, it's like a 50-50, because at one point, this is like a love letter to killer bug grindhouse movies. And so on one end, you kind of want it to be, a quick cut, simple, not really explain, just a quick to the carnage, schlocky B-movie thing. But on the other end, because the characters aren't fleshed out, you don't really feel bad for them or care for them. But at the same point, you kind of, like, when you watch like a grindhouse movie or Video Nasty, you kind of don't really care about the characters. You want to see the plot. So I'm like on the fence. Like, part of me is like wishes the characters were a bit more fleshed out, or we got to see more of like their their relatives, because this reminded me of like the House on Haunted Hill from 1999, the way he invited everyone to the island who is like a relative. So it would have been cool to see some background, like flashback footage, or like the first tests of Dr. Morgan's fucking bugs and shit. But instead, it just, says, oh yeah, all of our family members kind of fucked this guy over and now he wants us dead. Like, it just was really quick, and it kind of just, I don't know, it felt cheap, but at the same, I don't know, like I'm going in circles here. I mean, on one end, I wanted it to be like a Grindhouse movie, but at the other end, I wanted it fleshed out more. I feel like this would have felt like a little less of a ripoff if, let's say, Steve Niles and Piotr Kowalski, let's say they did 4 stories like Satan Swarm, 4 different stories in an anthology and put it in a comic. If that was like 30, maybe even $40, I'd feel like that would be more worth it than just one 64-page story. But again, it's such a hard way to rate this because I didn't hate it, but there's just certain things. I think this might be a thing on Dark Horse, the way they packed it and sold it. It's just the how short it was for the price I'm paying. It just kind of really rubbed me the wrong way. So if I had to rate this on a scale from like 1 to 10, I'd probably have to give it a 5.5 because, like I said, major fucking points for making me think of movies like Slugs or Centipede Horror or like the movies like Wild Beasts or Rats. Like those are all classics, and that's like a genre I definitely do love. And I mean, there has been a Grindhouse comic, so these stories can be done. But even the Grindhouse comic, I think Dark Horse put it out, so this goes back to them. Even the comic book Dark Horse put out about Grindhouse, that was a double feature, and that was like maybe close to 200, maybe 120, 200 pages. So they can definitely do double feature horror stories with shit like Satan Swarm. Why they released this as a single for the price they did, I have no idea. But because of that, like I said, I have to give it a 5.5. The fucking art was amazing. The story was pretty fucking cool, if not, a little too quick and not fleshed out. But it was still entertaining. It's just, I can't see a lot of people, running to buy this for the price that it is. I feel like, and the general consensus I saw online was like, it was between 3 stars and 1 star. So I'm pretty sure people are either okay with this or they hate it. And I think it has to boil down to the price and how fast they can get through this story. But if you want to get through something for 15 minutes, kill 15 minutes of your time and get a little throwback to 80s video nasty, bug attack, carnage, hell yeah, man. Check out Satan Swarm. It's cool. But maybe wait a couple months and go to a secondhand store and get this for like, $10 or some shit. Because like, fuck, man, $29.99. At least in America, I think it's $22.99. But even still, that's a little steep for me, man. Like, I feel like wait maybe a year or two, go to a secondhand store or a comic store, it'll drop in price. But like, I wouldn't pay cover for this. If it was like a couple bucks, like the price of a normal 64-page comic, I might have given this a 7, 8, maybe something like that. But as it stands right now, I'd probably say I'm comfortable giving this a 5.5, which kind of sucks because I really did like it. There was a lot to like about it, but just it left me wanting more. And I guess that's the major thing about it that really I didn't like. But it's not by any means a bad comic. I've definitely read worse. But yeah, there's not much else I can say about it. Satan Swarm. Check it out if you're interested. If you're into horror comics, if you're into horror in general, you might want to give this a spin. If you're into like old school Grindhouse type shit, check it out. But oh yeah, if you're into Dark Horse, and I love Dark Horse too, I guess that's part of the reason why I picked this up. And yeah, not else like much I can really say. A little fried right now. Sorry for running in circles for any of you guys who bared with me this whole way through. If you like this episode, you want to see me talk about more comics, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.